We all know that the price of groceries has skyrocketed, and now Alberta beef, even though it's produced here in the West, is also becoming unaffordable. Also, the Prime Minister met with all the premiers recently, but will there be a pipeline built? And what are the polls saying about our new PM, Mark Carney? Brian Lilley is a political commentator and Toronto Sun columnist. He joins me now to chat about it all. Brian, welcome back.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Okay, so Brian, as the Prime Minister met with the premiers in Saskatoon, there was a lot of smoke wafting through the city due to the wildfires, of course. But Mark Carney was really trying to clear the air with the premiers. So did it work?
It seemed to. Look, I expected him to deliver something on Monday. I thought that with all the premiers putting in their demands and their lists and the projects that they wanted, that he would come out and announce something going forward. He didn't. They did come together and say, here are the five criteria that any projects will need to meet. Some of that, such as green growth potential, items like that, might make folks in the oil patch wonder and worry. But even Premier Danielle Smith, Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe, were saying generally good things out of the meeting. Premier Smith did say if we get to the point where the government has to build a pipeline, we will have failed at the assignment. I agree with that. But everyone seems to be willing to give Mark Carney benefit of the doubt for now. I guess we're still in that early phase where you say, okay, you keep saying the right words. My point is there needs to be a little less conversation, a little more action, to quote Elvis.
There you go. So, Brian, you are reporting that a deal is imminent between Ottawa and Washington. So, what kind of trade deal are we talking about here?
It would not be the giant, 1,000-page trade deal that is the Kuzma or Usmaka, whichever name you want to give to it. It goes by both. It wouldn't be the massive NAFTA deal. Uh, when the Brits got their deal with the Trump administration, it was about 12 pages, and it was a very high-level proposal that talked about things in broad strokes. And that's what I'm told we are looking at. And so there is a draft plan there, a draft deal, if you will. Will political leaders on both sides of the border be able to get it to the finish line? That part we don't know. The goal is to have something announced by the time the G7 meetings start on Sunday, June 15th in Kananaskis, Alberta. You guys are getting a lot of attention these days, and so they want the deal announced by then. Is it at the beginning of the G7 meetings? Do they do it before? Does Donald Trump blurt out on Air Force One on the way up that he signed a deal and it's the best deal ever? We don't know, but very high level, broad strokes, things like supply management for dairy, that would be put aside. The digital services tax, which all the Americans hate. The Biden administration was taking us to, trade tribunals over that. That would be set aside for now. Those things and the full renegotiation of the massive Kuzma trade deal would be put off into the future, and general agreement on broad principles would be part of this deal.
Carney also talking about these big nation building projects. And we didn't get a commitment from him on Monday out of that meeting for a new pipeline or any other major projects like that. But you think some of these other big nation building projects could be part of that trade deal with Trump. So why do you think that?
Well, I mean, there are things that he could do that would really make the Americans happy that would also be a nation building project, something like the uh, Grays Bay Port project in Nunavut, which could make Alberta very happy if it was paired with a pipeline going north to the Arctic coast. The Americans have wanted Grays Bay to be up there. It's primarily the proposal is primarily for commercial uses, trade uses for this deep water port in the Arctic. But you could end up with additional national security through that. So you tie in a pipeline going north, a port, space for the Navy to operate up there. The Americans become very happy. That's what Donald Trump wants. He wants us looking after our Arctic security, where, as Steve Bannon said to me a couple of months ago, it is our soft underbelly. So, all these things could end up being part of it, or, some sort of energy security corridor. That could all be part of trying to, beef this up, make it look good, make it look like Trump can also say, hey, they're building this port, and that's a military investment, and we're going to also join the Golden Dome, and so we're not subsidizing Canada anymore. I can lift the tariffs.
Okay, Brian, tell us about the ongoing debate about the pipelines going through Quebec. It seems that, well, there's been some thawing of the opinion in that province. The debate about it is not quite complete yet.
Yeah, Quebec Premier Francois Legault has been more open to a pipeline going through his province, saying, well, maybe given what's going on with Donald Trump, now's the time. But in Ottawa, the Bloc Québécois has been defiant, and they are saying you can't use Donald Trump to put a pipeline through our jurisdiction. Well, it's not the choice of the Bloc Québécois. There has been improvements in public opinion polling on the idea, but at the provincial level, all the opposition parties are fighting against it. At the federal level, the Bloc is dead set against it. And so there is a huge debate in Quebec. One of my colleagues at National Post went through and looked at the speeches of a newly elected Bloc MP and he's a former Greenpeace activist, kind of like Stephen Guilbeault, but working for the separatists instead of the Liberals. He's mentioned since Parliament returned, and remember that was just last week, he's mentioned pipelines in Quebec 20 times.
Wow.
So they are pushing hard against it. Not saying it won't happen, but I imagine it would be a big election issue in Quebec, and I think they're expected to go to the polls next year.
Yeah. Well, Brian, in a few weeks' time, politicians from across the country will descend on Calgary, not just to head to the mountains for the G7 summit, but also to put on a cowboy hat that they might be wearing once a year and taking some stampede action, which is coming up in July. So Justin Trudeau often got a rough ride. He would always show up and flip a pancake or two. But you have looked at the polls, and they're saying right now that Mark Carney is about as popular as Pierre Poilievre. So is that for real?
It is. It's Janet Brown, the Alberta-based pollster, who did this polling, and they said on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you, 0 to 10, 0 being the lowest, 10 being the highest, how impressed are you? And it was about 37% were on the impressed side, about 35% on the unimpressed side. The numbers very similar. They were within single digits of each other between Carney and Poilievre. So almost 4 in 10 Albertans are saying, "Yeah, I'm sufficiently impressed with how the guy's doing so far." Justin Trudeau wouldn't have gotten those numbers, and you saw the rough ride he would get at Stampede. So I doubt that if Mark Carney goes, and he most likely will, that I doubt he's going to get a rough ride from a lot of people who are giving him, as I said earlier, benefit of the doubt at this point. There's still 35% that aren't impressed, but that 37% number is a lot higher than I expected. By the way, I'll let the cat out of the bag now. You might see me in a cowboy hat at Stampede for the first time ever in all my years of visiting one of the most beautiful provinces in the country. I have never been to Stampede.
You've never been to Stampede. Well, shame on you. And I'm so happy that you're finally making it a priority to come this year, because it is just amazing. So, yeah, we'll be watching for you in a cowboy hat. You going to flip a pancake? We'll see. Maybe have one.
I might.
All right. Okay, so here in Alberta, speaking of Alberta, we are known for liking our beef. In fact, Alberta beef is its own brand. And of course, there are so many ranches in the province. And New Statistics Canada data, though, is showing that beef is getting so unaffordable for so many Canadians. Why is that, Brian?
Well, I'm going to give all the credit to Sylvain Charlevoix, the food professor, who brought this to my attention. He has a column in the Toronto Sun about it. And strip loin steaks are up 34%, according to StatsCan data, since January. Strip loin's up 34%. Ground beef even is up, I think, in the more than 10% category. And so people have been eating less beef over the last several years. There has been a decline in beef, but there's also been a decline in the size of the herd. And apparently, we have the fewest cattle in our beef herds than we've had since 1989. It's 35 years ago, 36 years ago, I guess, actually. And guess what? The population's grown an awful lot by then, but we've got fewer cows. So why is that happening? changes in the market, some ranchers just deciding, you know what, this is too risky, or some, he said, are bowing out because prices are high right now. It's a good time to sell, good time to get out of this. And some have turned to other methods of farming, including some going to crops. So that's happening. There's an increase in the US, but not as marked. He also points to the fact, how big the country is, geography, transportation, all of that. So he said there's a lot of problems, but he did call for an investigation by the Competition Bureau to see if there is collusion as well. When I was covering the bread price fixing scandal, there was an executive caught in an email talking about trying to fix the price of meat. Now, in that case, it was specifically pork. But if it happened in bread, and we've seen enough evidence that we should look into pork, maybe we should be looking into whether there is anti-competitive behavior driving up the price. I am a big fan of beef, and the supermarkets around me, they all market that it is Alberta beef. That's a selling feature. But I've been noticing that the good cuts are harder to find. They're not on the shelves because they're priced so high, and people won't be buying them.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, Brian, this Sunday coming up is Tax Freedom Day for most Canadians. It's not a holiday, but tell us what this day represents. I'm thinking bigger paychecks, slightly. Right?
It's a very depressing day, and the Fraser Institute has been calculating this every year, going back a couple of decades now. And Tax Freedom Day is the day that you have worked
Yes.
to pay your total tax bill. So that would be your federal income tax, your
Right.
provincial income tax, your sales tax, your property taxes on your home, all the taxes that you're going to pay in a year. They do it up, and on average, Canadians will have paid their tax bill by June 8th, and they get to work the rest of the year for themselves. How
Exactly.
sad is that we're into the 6th month. It's not 6 full months,
Yeah.
but it is into the 6th month before we've paid our full tax bill.
Maybe that's
It
seeing the glass
was
half empty.
it it
Whereas,
it, wa- it it was changing. It was going in the right direction for a
Mhm.
little while. Now it's since Justin Trudeau came in, it's gone in the other direction where it comes later in the year.
Mm-hmm. But the good news is that, like you said, we're now working for ourselves. So you actually get a little bit of a raise, it would seem, without paying all those all those taxes. I had one question regarding Mark Carney's polling and how Albertans see him. Do you think that he, being an Albertan and from Edmonton, makes a difference? Does he sort of have more of an ear for Albertans? Do you think? What's your opinion about that?
I'm not sure. I think it's just because he seems like an adult and is acting like an adult and seems to want to get things done.
Hmm.
This is a bit of the honeymoon phase,
Sure.
and it could quickly disappear if he, says the wrong thing in Alberta, or if he, gives into the desires of some of his cabinet ministers to shut down the oil and gas industry, or brings back the fertilizer nitrogen mandates. If those sorts of things happen, I think this popularity could go away quickly. If he shows that he's getting things done and behaving like an adult, maybe people will like him even more. I was commenting a little while ago. We're excited about a guy being punctual and dressing properly in the office. We shouldn't be. That just shows you how low Justin Trudeau lowered the bar. And so we're having someone act like an adult. I think it's refreshing. And whether people voted for Carney and the Liberals or not, they're going, wow, thank God it's not the guy in his running shoes at the throne
Yes,
speech
right.
again.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know Premier Danielle Smith has invited him to one of the Oilers games coming up at Rogers' place.
He is a big Oilers fan,
Yes.
and he was before the bandwagon. I encourage everyone to get on the bandwagon right now, though.
Yeah, for sure. Show up in your blue and orange, definitely. We'll see if he's there. Brian Lilley of the Toronto Sun, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate having you on.
Thank you for having me.